This video is sponsored by Raycon. In 2017 was a great year for Nintendo. It was their official launch of the Nintendo Switch, a console which has already become many people's favorite, along with the release of both Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. These games set out to change the formula established in past titles, and this is especially the case for Breath of the Wild. My favorite part of the game, by far, is the freedom to play however I want, to go wherever I want. This also happened to be the year Horizon Zero Dawn released. In fact, it launched less than a week before Breath of the Wild. While this game has nothing to do with Nintendo, and I'd only get to play it 2 years later, it's seriously one of the best games I've played and does share some parallels with the former. In fact, I started streaming it on my channel, blah blah blah, feel free to check it out, blah blah, shameless plug. Now, fast forward to 2019. The year where we were all surprised with a trailer for the sequel to Breath of the Wild. This was a pretty big deal. Anyways, thanks to this trailer, the game once again became the talk of the town. Everyone was talking about Breath of the Wild and what its sequel may hold. But that wasn't the only reason the game was frequently brought up. Because something else happened in that event which caused some heads to turn and eyes to roll. A trailer for a little game called Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is an open-world action role-playing game developed by MiHoYo, featuring all of your favorite anime cliches, stereotypical main characters, and waifus included. Its first trailer was released on June 7th of 2019, showing off the world and its art style, including some of the gameplay mechanics such as climbing, swimming, and gliding. Now that I mention it, why does this all look so familiar? Wasn't there another game where you could climb anything and glide wherever you wanted? What was it called again? Legend of the Zelda Wild Breath? Oh, wait, I mean The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And then you take a step back and look at other things such as the game's art style closely matching that of Zelda's, or even the way the trailer is presented.
I think you are now ready to hear what happened 100 years ago.
It was clear that this game was trying to be like Breath of the Wild, whether it be a marketing strategy or just because this company really liked the direction the series had gone. And it was these events which made people label Genshin Impact as that Breath of the Wild clone, something that to this day is still discussed. The overall reaction of gamers was not necessarily positive. Some photos had circulated through Twitter showing a fan smashing their PS4 in protest of this announcement, and even a Change.org petition demanding the cancellation of Genshin Impact. While it's questionable as to why you'd smash a console as a form of protesting, something that you've already given that company money for, and that in the end it made even more people interested in the game and was basically free marketing, you can't deny that part of Genshin Impact's foundation comes from Breath of the Wild. I say only part because many of the similarities to Breath of the Wild come in its presentation. At first glance, I can definitely see why many refer to it as a clone. Even smaller details such as enemy camps and the boss health link back to this game. Pun definitely intended. At the time of the initial announcement, while I also looked at it as a Breath of the Wild clone, that didn't necessarily mean that I wasn't excited to get my hands on it. See, there are multiple ways to view Genshin Impact. You could see it as a company who is ripping off a popular game for the sake of brand recognition, getting them more sales, or a game that copies elements of another due to a lack of confidence of sorts. Instead of coming up with original ideas, it uses ones already invented by popular titles. Neither of these align with my thoughts. I greatly enjoyed Breath of the Wild, so the idea of playing a game built upon a similar foundation actually makes me kind of excited, I guess? Especially since I've been quite vocal in the past with my problems with the game. Seeing how Genshin Impact approaches the open world genre with lots of its inspiration from Breath of the Wild will be very interesting. Also, and this is something I just thought of while writing this script, Many people may be outraged that this game is shamelessly copying Breath of the Wild, but it does remind me of another game, Bug Fable's The Everlasting Sapling. Because when you look at the reviews, many of them refer to this game as a Paper Mario. Now, I haven't played it myself, but the gameplay clearly shows how similar these games are. Even the developers state that the game was heavily inspired by Paper Mario, as they believe the later games strayed too far from the series' formula. The main reason Bug Fables is so well received is because it brought back that traditional Paper Mario that fans so desperately wanted. But I feel the real victim here isn't Genshin Impact, or even Breath of the Wild, but that poor console which was smashed to bits. Clearly this is an injustice that can't be overlooked. If only this person had more compassion for inanimate objects. If only they understood the fruitless attempt of destroying a product which they already purchased. If only they knew. About Raycon. Now, I listen to a lot of music, whether it be while working on my next video, organizing my overly cluttered room, or just sitting there and questioning my life choices as to why I overanalyze a fictional world with fictional characters, because in the end it doesn't really matter and most of the stuff theorized wasn't even intended to be canon by Nintendo. Well, thanks to Raycon's everyday E25 earbuds, you can get that sound quality from premium earbuds without paying those premium prices. And right now you can go to the link in the description, buyraycon.com/NintendoBC, and get 15% off your order. As someone who lives with family, having access to a pair of headphones or earbuds is crucial. Not only for my job, but during those times when I just want to unwind and play some of my favorite games or watch anime. I've only recently transitioned to wireless, and thanks to both the discreet and comfort feel of the everyday E25 earbuds, they've become my go-to pair. And that's not even taking into account their incredible sound quality, especially the powerful bass on them. No, I said bass, not bass. Are you worried that you'll lose your precious earbuds when venturing through the dangerous world that is called outside? No problem. The E25 includes a compact charging case which will keep your earbuds safe, giving it 4 full charges before having to be plugged back in. There's a wide variety of colors to pick from, and the box comes with several sized gel tips, letting you choose whatever feels most comfortable. So thanks once again to Raycon for sponsoring this episode, and if you are interested in grabbing a pair of these, just go to the link in the description, buyraycon.com/NintendoBC, and get a 15% discount on your order. That's buyraycon.com/NINTENDOBC. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah, right. Genshin Impact and its close connections to Breath of the Wild. A lot of the parallels drawn between both games are first-glance kind of details. Most people will bring up either the similar open world/art style, the swimming, climbing, and gliding, or the enemy camps. In regards to both the art style and open world, I definitely put that under a inspiration sort of category. Though, in regards to like the enemies and monster camps, I definitely agree that it's a bit too similar. It does kind of borderline on the clone aspect, but I wanted to go into more detail specifically about the swimming, climbing, and gliding. We have to ask the question, why were these mechanics added to Breath of the Wild in the first place? Well, what's the point of including these features? The answer is simple. Breath of the Wild takes place in an open world. To make navigation much easier, the player needs a variety of traversal options, hence the inclusion of these mechanics. They're allowed to travel not only on foot, but in water, up cliffs, and through the air. It's not like Breath of the Wild was the first game to include swimming, climbing, and gliding, but in all fairness, it definitely did reinvent climbing, as you can scale almost any surface in the game. With all that said, at the end of the day, these are mechanics used to make traversing the vast world of Hyrule much easier. And I don't think it's fair to say that only Breath of the Wild can use these ideas. Any open world game should have the freedom to include these sort of traveling options. Like I said before, it wasn't the first to include gliding or swimming, but they exist in the game and no one has a problem with it. Let's say that Genshin Impact didn't include climbing or gliding, but it kept the open world. I can't help but feel that in some alternate universe, the game would ultimately be criticized for not having more methods of traversal. In fact, it would eventually be compared to Breath of the Wild, in which people would point out how that game lets you climb anything and travel through the air, But unless humanity suddenly invents a machine which lets us hop timelines, we won't know for sure if that's what would happen.
他在跟龙说话。
说起来，你们知道吗？风魔龙也是曾经的四风守护之一。
从没见过，也从没听过的情况啊。
There actually was a beta test that took place back in July, which I'm totally not salty about missing. The thing is, Genshin Impact was announced around the time of Breath of the Wild 2, so I kind of forgot about that game for several months because, you know, theories. But while I myself haven't tried the game out, many videos of this beta test were posted online, meaning I can go off of both what other players said about the game and footage of the game itself. I won't go into any details about the story because, quite frankly, I don't want to be spoiled myself, but I will brush over the game's intro. Two siblings are fighting some powerful deity or wizard or something, and depending on which one you choose to be, the other will be kidnapped and the whole goal is to save them. This all takes place in the kingdom of Teyvat. Teyvat. I don't know how to say that. I do appreciate how quickly the game gets through the introduction, and whether the rest of the story is good or not, we're just gonna have to wait and see. From what I've seen, one of the highlights of this game appears to be the combat. There are several characters to unlock throughout the story, and the player can quickly switch between them in the overworld. Each one has their own element to use for attacks, but the best part comes from the combos. For example, you can cast some wind magic on an enemy, switch to another character, and use fire to create a flaming tornado. This adds a lot of depth to the battles, while also keeping things simple. On the topic of simple, the controls for Genshin Impact are just that. This mostly has to do with the game releasing on mobile, but as of now it's coming to iOS, Android, PlayStation 4, PC, and yes, even the Nintendo Switch. It further goes to prove how chill they are with this game despite its similarities to Breath of the Wild. It's not like they feel like they're being threatened with having competition. Anyways, since the game was designed with the intent of releasing on mobile, the developers had to take into account the touch controls and limited real estate of phone screens, hence the simplified controls. And apparently this game runs amazingly on the PC, so I'm looking forward to that. Now for the concerns. I mentioned that this game was intended to release on Android and iOS. There's one other detail about Genshin Impact. It will be free to play. But how will the game make money? Well, like most mobile games, Genshin Impact will include microtransactions. And I won't lie, this is where I get a bit concerned. From what I've heard, there are some characters locked behind the gacha system frequently seen in these type of games. I'm pretty sure you can get these characters just by grinding, but you'll have to be very lucky. The drop rate for each one is like less than 1%, which is kind of ridiculous, but on the bright side, this isn't a competitive game, so players won't necessarily have a pay-to-win mindset. And as said previously, some of these characters are unlocked just by playing the story. And, speaking of story, parts of it will apparently be locked behind your adventure level. So whether it feels like this game will be too much of a grind to get through or not will be testament to how enjoyable this game is or isn't. This certainly won't be a Breath of the Wild moment where you can take Ganon on at Hyrule Castle right after leaving the Great Plateau. Another thing that's odd about Genshin Impact is that, while it's in every way a single-player game and not really related to MMO, it has a couple MMO-like design choices? You have a number of quests that can be completed, giving your character EXP. Each day these are reset, meaning that once you complete them all, you have to wait the next day to get more. And this is a very odd mechanic to implement since while there is multiplayer, it's not the main focus of the game. That still has to be the single-player story. I decided to reach out to a couple other Zelda YouTubers to see what they had to say about Genshin Impact.
I played around 15 minutes of the PS4 demo back at PAX earlier this year, so I'm not an expert on it at all, but I got a tiny feel for it. It goes without saying how heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild the game is, with the climbing and gliding mechanics, and even the types and designs of the basic enemies. There's a basic Bokoblin style enemy, there's Choo-Choos, Octoroks, and the Wizrobes especially are basically identical. It definitely doesn't hide its inspirations. There's a whole load of RPG elements like gaining XP and switching between a group of characters with different abilities, even if one of them literally just has Rivali's Gale. Overall though, despite a couple of issues like a choppy frame rate which I'm sure will be ironed out, it was really fun and I'm looking forward to it.
For me personally, I thought the game looked great. I'm a sucker for this type of an expansive showcase of the world. I mean, come on, Breath of the Wild is currently my favorite Zelda game. And like many of the previous Zelda games, Breath of the Wild set a standard that other developers want to try and emulate and put their own spin on it, which makes it very exciting. Bringing together the elements and different forms of combat throughout the various characters you control in this game is incredibly fun, and it makes for some interesting gameplay aspects. And the combination of colors along with the style makes for a real treat for the eyes. I just wish that the game had better traversing, as moving, climbing, and even gliding felt a bit clunky the last time I played it. But hey, given everything that this game seems to offer, I'm extremely excited for this. And not only this, but to see what other developers try to do and spin on Nintendo's open air triumph.
And that's mostly it. While the developers have been transparent with how much Breath of the Wild inspired them, I feel that calling the game a clone at this point is not giving Genshin Impact enough credit. In the end, we won't know how good the game is until we get our hands on it, but I do hope it leaves a mark on the gaming industry, and one that isn't negative. The fact that it all feels like an anime really helps with giving it an identity, and while parts of Breath of the Wild were inspired by animated films, it was much less emphasized in the game. One thing I would say is that I'm legitimately interested in reviewing the game when it comes out. I'm just saying that if anyone at MiHoYo is watching this video and you're looking for people to send early codes to for the sake of reviews, my email is down below. With all that said, thank you for watching today's video. I'll have some other videos that I used as reference to this one down below in the description if people want a more in-depth look into this game. A part of the reason I made it was because I saw the recent trailer for the game on Sony's State of Play and was like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to do a video on this. If you enjoyed, then make sure to subscribe for more videos, mainly on Zelda, but I do cover other topics from time to time. A special thanks to my patrons, and as always, links to my Discord and Twitter are down below. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all next time.